Let me ask you something. Are you getting everything out of your rent-to-own business? If you're not an A-Pro member, then the answer is probably no. Look, advocacy is A-Pro's bread and butter. This is why they were created and what they do best. But here's the thing. A-Pro membership is about way more than advocacy. A-Pro connects you to the movers and the shakers of the industry, people who've been there, done that, and they can help you do it even better. A-Pro's monthly webinars give you expert insights and actionable takeaways. It's like having a masterclass for your business every single month. Got questions about complex regulations or sticky situations? No problem. A-Pro's legal hotline gives you direct access to experts who have got the answers. That's a peace of mind that you can't put a price on. And let's not forget the resources, news, updates, and tools that keep you ahead of the curve. Scholarships for your team? Check. Disaster relief when you need it most? Double check. A-Pro is your ultimate support system in the rent-to-own world. So stop settling for less. With A-Pro, members get more. More support, more connections, and more success. Head over to rtohq.org and join the A-Pro family today. Because in this business, more isn't just better. It's essential. See you at the top with A-Pro. Hello and welcome back to the RTO Show. I'm your host, Pete Chow. Today I'm talking to Andrew Hajduk from Vox Populi about building your brand, because it's really about building your brand in these RTO businesses and how you're going to separate yourself from what's going on out there in the world, and how you're going to separate yourself from the other rent-to-own dealers that are kind of selling the same product and kind of doing the same thing. How do you make yourself stand out? Andrew, great to have you on the show. You've been a sponsor of the show, which we love. We love to hear from our sponsors, and there's nobody else better, I think, to talk to us about building a brand and your product brand than somebody who can actually do that for us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Pete, and it is so good to be here. I'm glad we finally were able to sit down and do this. Happy to be a sponsor of the show, and I am really glad to see what you're doing with this brand and trying to promote RTO as a whole.
Oh, we love that. We love trying to get everybody involved in the rent-to-own business and the rent-to-own mindset. You know, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and I think there's certain people that really need to understand it more, and I'm talking about general managers and down. They have so much that's going on. I don't know if they really know what's going on. That's the whole purpose of this, was to bring it to the whole idea of rent-to-own from the bottom all the way to the top. So when we're talking about building your brand, what is the first thing that comes to mind when I say build your brand? As somebody who's in the position that you're in, the company that you run, and you have the ability to help people actually literally build their brand, what's the first thing that comes to mind when we say build your RTO brand?
So I think the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about building your brand is, what are you, right? What is your ethos? What is your purpose? What do you want to represent, and what do you want to reflect? Is it that we are going to be, have great looking stores and always sell new product or brand names? Or are we going to focus on getting product to everybody at great deals and, making it big on promotions and stuff like that? And I think that that's one of the things that there's a little bit, especially in 2023 right now as we go, where there's a little bit of confusion maybe, or lack of clarity, where everybody over the last couple of years, when there was a lot of money out there and stuff like that, and it was, inventory shortages, we were able to sell. We didn't have to rely on what our brand is. But now we're starting to find out, hey, my brand is so much more important now for what I am and how I stand out in the marketplace, not just to my customers, but to my internal customers, to my associates, to the GMs, to the delivery techs, to everybody else, because we really are all selling the same product, right? I have washers and dryers from GE or from whoever it is. I have mattresses from Sealy. I have whatever it is. We're selling similar products. So other than a deal, and we know, right, all the research has shown that customers will shop from people they like. And, we make price the big thing, not so much the customers. So what is our brand? What's making us different? What's going to make Pete come buy from me, or Andrew come buy from Pete? And that's really what our brand is.
I think you're nailing exactly what everybody wants to know. So then the big question is, from a marketing standpoint, how do you identify what's going on around you as far as building their brand so that you can change your brand to be unique to who you are or who your company is?
So I think first and foremost, right, you have to look at, what does the brand say? Everybody has their core messaging, their logo, their look, all their different things. and what that represents, right? Are we more fun? Are we more serious, right? What are all of those things that we can tie into? And we start looking at what just the elements are, and then we take that and start looking at what does it mean with the stores, right? What does it mean with how our associates look? What does it mean all the way down to, how the trucks look, everything like that? And we start with branding from that perspective, right? Are we, advertising materials look like, and just kind of doing an assessment of what's out there then, and then talking with, with the owners, with the operators, even with store managers about where are you trying to get to? What do you want to accomplish with this, right? Are we trying to sell a certain product? Are we trying to promote an event? Or are we trying to do something more to generate awareness bias, right? It's so many times we just get into a mode and we start mixing in branding and marketing and advertising, which are three distinct things, but they kind of all cross together. And we get mixed up in that, and we just sit there and look at, hey, my marketing is a flyer with a $25 off coupon or something like that. And we try to define that. Well, I think it's much bigger than that, and that's where you have to start coming in and asking questions. What are you trying to accomplish? What customers are you trying to go after? What are you trying to get out of them? How are we going to execute it? Do my people understand the message of what we're trying to execute? Somebody told me once, long time ago, they said, we have to make sure that when we are marketing to our internal associates just as much to our external associates. And I think that's a huge part of our branding because they're the ones that are going to deliver the message.
So branding basically is, what are we known for, right? And that's what you want to shoot for, the main scope, whether it be speed of delivery in the service, or maybe it be the friendly customer service, or maybe it's that we have a lot more product than the next guy. And you build on that particular point to execute out into your marketing, and then execute out into your people, and then make sure that at the end result, the customer understands exactly what the point is?
Yeah, 100%. And the word that I used earlier, and I think it's a great word for it, is your brand really at its core is your ethos, right? What is it that people think about you when they think of that brand, right? When they think of the RTO show, what are the top 3 words, the top 4 words that come to mind? When people think of Vox Populi, what are the top 3 words? What are the top 4 words that come to mind? Or even, somebody's personal brand and stuff like that. But it's really, what are those things that come to mind? And in your brand, again, we can communicate brand, we can do all of those things, but your brand is also a function of what you have done in the past, right? It's what are my actions, right? What is the feel in the marketplace about these guys? The look, right? They drive past our stores. They see Pete walking down the street in his new RTO podcast.
That's
shirts.
right. That's right.
And seeing stuff like that. What are we communicating there? So, brand to me, and I always tell people this, a brand is a living thing, right? It's not something that we just put down on paper and we say, this is our brand, and we're going to print posters and do all this other stuff and say, that's it. People think about brands in terms of brand guidelines, and you've got to follow this. Well, what is that built on, right? What is my brand supposed to reflect? Do people want to see that, hey, we've got these great, clean, high-end looking stores, and we've got name brand products and all of this other stuff that people are coming in, and my people are really fulfilling a mission by talking to people and making sure they're getting them in the right product and things like that. It's kind of everything we stand for. Or are we going to be, a low cost provider, or do some different things like that?
So when somebody comes to you, and let's say they've had a brand, right? They've had a brand, they come to Vox Populi, they're talking to you and say, Andrew, I think I need to redo, right? I need to start over. I've had a branding, I've done this for 20 years. I think I'm not in the right set. I need to rebrand.
Okay.
You ever have them come to you and then you realize that they're kind of stuck in their old ways, no matter, why do we get stuck in our old ways and rent to own? I think that's one of the hardest things I've noticed is that we hold on to what we always thought worked great. And then when we do go into a rebrand or we do go into a remarketing scene, we're like, we want to start off fresh. And somehow underneath the surface, we look like we're kind of going back to the same roots. And I think part of what I've noticed in the past probably year and a half is that things are changing. And these rebrands are probably going to either have to come, or we're going to have to step up our game with what we are doing. Why do we hold on to the past so much?
Let's take a quick break.
Hey everyone, it's Pete Chow here from the RTO Show podcast, and I want to tell you about a company that's making a real difference in the rent-to-own space. Wow Brands. I've seen firsthand how they approach marketing. And let me tell you, it's not just about ads. Wow Brands builds complete digital ecosystems designed specifically for the rent-to-own industry. Their e-commerce and lead generation strategies are built to bring in qualified leads. And did I mention that they are actively working with the rent-to-own industry while also being members of APRO and TRIB? Listen, these folks are passionate problem solvers. They don't just slap something together, they design, build, and scale the kind of digital retail tools your business needs and your customers actually want. So if you're serious about growing, reach out to Wow Brands at wowbrands.com. I trust them, and I think you will too.
Well, I think we hold on to the past because of what's comfortable, right? I think we hold on to the past because something worked in the past. I think we hold on to the past because we're familiar with the past. I think we hold on to the past because we're scared of change. We hold on to the past even a little bit because sometimes we think we want to make a change, but it's kind of our backup plan, right? If this doesn't work, then we can always go back to this way. And, so without ever really letting go, can you make any progress? I think that's a big part of it. It's just that familiarity of it. But I do agree with what you said. I think that there's a lot of things that have to change. And I don't think that this is RTO specific. I think this is specialty retail. I think it's in the service to the customer. I think it's brick and mortar. I think we have to change the way we're doing business as the world has changed. The world is different than it was in 2022. It's different than it was in 2021. And the only constant is it will continue to be different.
So as people come, they tell you that they've got a lot going on. That puts a lot in your hands, right? So somebody comes to
Sure.
Vox Populi and says, hey, I need this and I need this now because either my brand is suffering or I just need to reach a new demographic. Or as we know, we have a few generations out there that buy completely different, right? So we have the older generation that's still hopefully reading newspapers if they can. Then you've got Gen X that's kind of a little bit going to that. We're still kind of stuck on Facebook. We're not as on social media as we like to. We like to still shake hands and see people. Then you got millennials who are a little bit more on their phones, actually more often than not. So wherever Gen Z likes to shake your hand, they like to just send you a friend request as far as millennials go. And then you've got the latest generation or Gen Z that everything is digital. How do you market to those different generations? Because they're so different than the ones before. And, when we're talking about different generations, this is the first time in history that there are so many different steps between one and the next. So the baby boomers grew up reading newspapers. They grew up doing things face to face. If you wanted to go to the bank, you couldn't open your app and do that, right? And then get it done. So from their generation to the silent generation to all that before, that was all in your face. And now you've got these stair steps where you're getting a little bit more digital to halfway digital to completely digital. How does Vox Populi really make an effective approach to all of these generations? Because we're kind of dealing with all of them in rent-to-own right now.
So I think that's a great point, and it's a great example. And I think this is where stumbling happens. First off, we sit there and say, right, brand and market and all of that, those are all separate elements. So let's start with, right, you had started with asking about, how do we start on working the brand and helping evolve, rebrand, and work on that stuff. So we start and take, we have a process where we work with folks, and whether it's a new look, it's working on messaging, whatever it is, that's where we start first, right? We develop, whether it's that new logo, a new color scheme, new type styles, all of that stuff that feeds into everything we learned about what the brand is and where we want to take the brand. Then we start talking about how do we market this, right? So then you start looking at, hey, what does the store have to look like? What does the direct mail pieces have to look like? How do we reach them on social media? What are all the different things? But, we have to have that approach. And if you look at the great brick and mortar retail models out there, they do have an approach that touches them all, right? It's in store, online, or a hybrid model where you can call and talk to somebody and chat. It's not just going one channel. And I think that's where there's, where folks get confused or off track is we think it's got to be all of one thing. Hey, I'm going to go all in on digital on this. Okay. So that is a marketing strategy and that is a way to do it. Now let's make sure that the brand supports that, but we've got to make sure that we execute that. But I think that one of the things that we're going to have to see over the coming months, years, as we continue to evolve, is we have to take care of people in all ways. I think that there has to be, and I think one of the really important, critical things of brand is service. And that's, how do we service people, right? Amazon's brand definitely has a service aspect to it. You know what it looks like. You know that you can return everything. You know that half the time when you try to return something, they tell you just to keep it and things like that. But they have that service model built into it. How are we building in our service model, whether we're selling online to a customer face-to-face or over the phone? And I think that's the part of it that we have to make sure we address, because that's where our brand really gets impacted.
So I was talking to a GM not that long ago. He's been in a couple of different RTO companies, and one of the things that he mentioned in his past is that one of the companies went highly to digital, like 80%, if not 85% of their marketing went to digital. And we kind of agreed that it's got to be a multifaceted approach, just like you're saying. Like there's different sets of people out there, and depending on how you want to approach them. But, I even noticed in my regions, if you stop taking out the mail piece, you lose a chunk. Mm-hmm. If you don't go into the social media digital piece, you'll lose a chunk. If you don't do something that brings them in the door, you lose a chunk. And so is this time more now than ever, or has it always been where you have to do a multifaceted approach?
I think you have to do a multifaceted approach. I think that in this business especially, do we have those candy store products where somebody sits there and walks by and sees it, whether it's a PS5 or something like that, and they say, I absolutely have to have it, and we can trigger them to make a purchase? Yes, we do have those. But for the most part, and this is the example that I've always used in working with stores and things like that, is if I have a perfectly good working washer and dryer, there's no amount of free time you can give me that's going to make me replace my washer and dryer, right? No matter what it is. So part of our marketing and branding and all of those other things has to touch that. Again, going back to my washer and dryer example, when do I need a washer and dryer? When mine breaks and it costs too much to repair, or when I walk downstairs in the morning and I'm standing in a puddle of water because a hose broke or something like that. Okay, who sells washers and dryers? And then I think about, I think I saw a piece in the mail from brand Z, right? Or I'm driving to work, I'm sitting next to a truck that's wrapped, and I see that brand. They sell washers and dryers, and it triggers me to remember a mail piece that I got that makes me think about a Facebook post that I saw, or a digital element. I think that's how it all has to work, right? We're not going to. I've worked with Mattress Firm now since 1999. We started working with them when they had 44 stores, and they're over 3,000. Steve Stagner, who was the CEO behind the growth of Mattress Firm, his philosophy was always, I can't force somebody to buy a mattress. They will have some event that changes in their life, new furniture, right? They're not sleeping good, whatever, but that's going to make them decide, I need a new mattress. My job as a marketer is Mattress Firm needs to be top of mind when they realize they need a new mattress. And I think that's part of it that's lost. We try to trigger sales with deals and stuff like that. But if we go back to focus on our core business and our brand and growing it, we have to touch customers all the time. So it's whatever, insert your store name here, is what I think about when I need a new washer and dryer, when I need a dinette, when I need a fridge, when I need an 85-inch TV, whatever it is, that's who they think of. Again, all those different mediums help that. The one other thing that I want to sit there and say is that helps me lead to building a brand and driving customers to where I can sell them. I would much rather sell to a customer than a customer simply make a buying decision. Because if they're making a buying decision, my brand is a lot less relevant, right? If they're making a buying decision and they're looking at 3 different things, they're going to look at features and they're going to look at price. And they're not going to necessarily know that we're better because I can deliver same day, because I'm going to be more flexible to work with you, because, there's different elements that we offer, with different protection plans or things like that. If I have the opportunity to drive the customer and build the brand to where I can sell to them, then I'm going to win a lot more often than when they're just simply buying.
So here's a quick question that might not have a quick answer, but I am curious. When I think of tools and working on the house, I think of, Lowe's and Home Depot. When I think about fast food, the first thing that usually comes to mind is like McDonald's and Taco Bell. There's a couple of brands that kind of just stand out up front. They just. When I think of getting appliances, there's a couple of different places that have just appliances, right? So as somebody who's building a brand around a company or an industry that carries a multifaceted amount of things in their store, right? Whether it be your local entertainment, whether it be your washer and dryer, whether it be education through computers, whether it be our living space, or, bedrooms, living rooms. How do you brand that against some of these other companies that do one thing specific very well versus an RTO industry that carries a few different things that they try to do very well? How do you put that mindset, that thought process, like we're talking about, getting that branded idea first, that if I'm thinking about purchasing something, I'm thinking about this company first versus somebody who is detailed in that area. So you're coming down the stairs and your washer is broken. How do you fight the I need to go directly to Lowe's versus I need to go directly to my local rent-to-own dealer who's going to take care of this situation?
So I think that, and you started with the Home Depot example there and you thought about tools. I'll challenge you, and I don't think that Home Depot ever branded themselves on tools. I think Home Depot branded themselves with, if you need to do anything to your home, we can help you get there. Right?
Yes.
So it was that whole DIY mindset. So it wasn't just, hey, do I need a Milwaukee drill, or do I need a Ryobi saw, or do I need a 5 4x8 sheets of plywood? It was, Home Depot branded themselves as the DIY solution or superstore or whatever it was. And you went there because you knew. We can brand ourselves as, we are where you need to come if you need furniture, electronics, appliances, TVs, whatever for your home. That, if you're a credit challenge customer, if you're any of those things, we are your first stop. I think if you brand yourself around products, around specific things, that gets challenging. That product becomes obsolete. That product evolves. There's an entire different definition, right? Somebody was once the king of rear projection televisions, right? I mean, you've been doing this a long time, Pete, right? We all remember those 55-inch big-ass RCAs that everybody had that weighed a ton and stuff like that. And if you had branded yourself around that, well, you'd be a dinosaur right now. So I think it's branding yourself around an outcome and what you provide, not just the deal and not just the specific product, but it's branding yourself around those things and making sure that people understand that this is where I go for furniture, like the home furnishings for my store. If this is who I am, and I know I'm a credit challenge customer or not a credit challenge customer, or I live in this part of town, and especially in some of these small towns, right? We've got a lot of RTO stores that are in these small towns that are so much more than just the place where a credit challenge customer goes. They are that source in that town, right? We've got small towns in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Illinois, Mississippi, Ohio, wherever, where, it's a rent to own store, but they're really that solution in that town for these guys.
So you've got the mindset that home furnishings probably needs to be on the end of the tongue, right? We cover the whole thing. We cover the whole gamut.
Home furnishings is probably the best one right now. So
agreed. So when you're setting up promotions for these rent-to-own industries, these rent-to-own companies, because I know it would differ. Maybe a northern store might be doing something a little different than a southern store, or, you've got something Midwest that might be a little bit different. I know that they tailor things a little bit different, but all in all, a promotion is a promotion. But as you're doing promotions, as you're thinking about a way to get somebody in the door, what is the first idea of a promotion? Is it to get somebody in? Is it to get somebody on the phone? Or, when I say that, like a physical promotion, like you got to come and do something, right? If you buy a lotto ticket, you've got to go buy a lotto ticket. You can't just do it on the phone, right? So you got to go do that. Is promotions the same where you have to have them involved to do something, or is a promotion more off to get them informed about something?
So I always, and I'll break it down to direct mail, and I'm going to use the same, I'm going to come back and explain what I mean by this. I think people always ask me, what is the goal with direct mail? And I say, well, the goal with direct mail is not to get thrown out. right? The goal of direct mail is to get noticed. We think of apartment complexes, multi-unit housing where they've got that wall of P.O. boxes, that big gray Rubbermaid trash can, and people are going through their mail and just throwing it right out, right? My goal in that case is I want to get in a car or get back into their house because then I have a chance of getting read. And if I have a chance of getting read, I have a chance of getting noticed and doing that. I think that's goal one. I think too many times we get hung up on, hey, somebody's going to read this, somebody's going to understand this, somebody's going to know this is exactly what I have to do. You know, I will say that sometimes in rent to own, we get notoriously complex with our offers and stuff like that. Like everybody that we're selling to understands rent to own business 100%. So we need to try to simplify that. But I would say the first part of having a promotion is, what are we going to do to get noticed, right? What are we going to do to make the customer say, hey, there's something going on here, right? So is that with a creative look to the place, with a catchy phrase, with whatever the theme is to get engaged? We did, with one of the customers we work with, we did a really cool promo in October. And when we designed it, it was designed both to capture the customer's attention by being different, by hitting them with something that's important to them or something that they're very involved in. It was timely, but there was also a high engagement component with the associates. So there was a game involved, right? Keeping the gamification side of it. It was different. We did hats that tied into the promo that all the associates were able to wear throughout the month. So the first part of that was capturing everybody's attention by being different, right? So it wasn't the same old. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are listening to this that are going to sit there and say, well, heck, that's what I did and stuff like that. It wasn't spooky savings in October, right? Everybody does spooky savings. So we did something completely different and we were noticed by that. And I think that's step one with designing a promotion is, does my message stand out and get noticed? Because remember, whether it's direct mail, whether it's a door hanger, whether it's a handshake card that I'm going out and guerrilla marketing with, or it's a Facebook ad or anything else, all of those things are tools for communicating the message. That's not going to work if my message isn't good, right? So what is my message? What is my offer? What is my event? How does it look? And is it different? Is it going to stand out? You know, guys, I hate to tell you, if you did spooky savings in October, it wasn't an original idea. There was at least 10 or 15 different dealers that I saw that did it. How are you different than them? Then it all just comes down to offer, which is the simplest thing that everybody, including our associates, revert to is, we got a better deal than you. But this race to zero, nobody's going to win on.
I'm going to say two things. The first thing is I understand exactly what you're saying. Last year, we were talking about what are we going to do for fall? And, you know, the idea of football came. It's football season, you know, touchdown to say, I'm like, I don't want to do any of that because everybody out there is going to do the exact same thing, right? Get a TV for the game. Let's do this around the touchdown. Let's do this around, you know, score a goalpost win with these savings. And I'm like, we're going to fall to the wayside of everybody just looking at us and going, this looks like that looks like that looks like that. So I completely agree with that. Be different. But then I started thinking, as you're talking about that, I'm like, have you ever come across an RTO echo chamber when it comes to marketing and somebody says that one idea and everybody's like, yeah. And then before you know it, it's just the generic same piece?
I think that some of that goes back to the very first thing you said, right? I mean, there's been a lot of things that were great and novel. And hey, look, somebody did spooky savings first, right? And they took it and they ran with it. You know, there's I've seen now over the past couple years, a purge event, which I believe Mike Tissett started, and or at least he's credited with starting that was taken by somebody else, that was taken by somebody else, it was taken by somebody else. And it continues to get done, you know, and so I think that maybe that's that echo chamber that you're talking about. Everything is fresh at some point, but then we go back to, hey, this is a good event. Hey, it's Halloween. We want to be October. Yeah, we can't promote Valentine's Day in October. I get that. But can we do something different, right? You know, can we do, you know, like the event that I was talking about that we did in October had to do with, we called it deal season, and it was all about hunting. We've got a lot of stores in the South, that, so we had a camouflage look to it. We had a bow and arrow game inside the stores that people could shoot at a target with and stuff like that. It was different. It resonated. And it was something that not just the customers loved, the associates loved it as well. Do we have to take advantage of some timing things? Yes. We have a holiday. We have Christmas coming up, right? For the 24th time or 24th time in a row, Christmas is coming up, and that's going to happen. We have holiday messages and things like that. But with a lot of our other stuff, we need to be different, right? We've got to figure out what's going to be different. And even going back to the direct mail piece, one of the things that we're doing a lot of, and we're seeing, some brands having a lot of success with it, let's just change up the carrier. Again, getting noticed, right? How do I get opened and I stand out from all the other mail? And I'm using mail as an example, but it's like that with everything. How do I get noticed? I've always said, when it comes to storefront, right? Because a lot of these stores are in the same part of town. They're in the same shopping center. I had an installer that was doing windows for me for a store that said, well, I knew I was in the right part of town when I saw Aaron's, and then I saw the Rent-A-Center, and then I saw somebody else. I knew that your customer's brand must be closed. Well, if we're not standing out and we're all different, then what happens? I'm just driving people to this area of town for my competitors as well, right? Because they're going to stop and they're going to capture, and I can do everything I want to do to pull that customer into my store. But if they drive past and they see an Aaron's, or they see a Rent-A-Center, or they see a Best Way or a Rent King or anybody else, and they see a different offer, they start to get confused, and they're going to stop at the first place they see.
We were talking about the echo chambers, and we're talking about the marketing, and we're talking about the branding. How does one get buy-in from the employees, from the staff members that didn't make the marketing decision, to buy into the decision that was made, let's say for the Deal Hunter? If it was successful, how do we get them to buy in to say, this is what we're going for, this is the idea that we have, and then get them to go, yeah, I'm good with that? How do we get that buy-in?
So I think there's a couple things that happen there. I think number one, first and foremost, is we have to get better. And I'm talking globally across the board, stuff like that. And this goes even beyond this business, but we have to get better at communicating stuff and coaching. We have to get better at making sure that people understand this is what we're doing. This is what our purpose is. This is how this is going to roll out. And here are the steps that you have to follow every single day. I just finished rereading John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership. He just redid it for the 25th anniversary of it. And I go back to that book that so many of us have read throughout our life. But he talks about, one of the keys to leadership is process. And I think that, we have to define that process with coaching and all these other aspects. And coaching and defining that process means we have to communicate. So it doesn't just show up and it's not just an email. Maybe it's a Zoom call. Maybe it's we can get our stores in a certain region together and we talk about it and we sit there and say, guys, this is the promo that we're doing this month. And why are we doing this promo? Because I'm trying to grow new customers, right? I'm trying to add more agreements to my single agreement customers. Whatever the goal is, I'm trying to bring in new blood. And we explain it. Or maybe all of those are the goals, and this is how we're going to tackle our multi-agreement customers. This is how we're going to tackle our single agreement customers. This is how we're going to tackle our inactive paid in fulls. And this is how we're going to go over new blood. Here's what we need. Here are the steps that you're going to do. And we provide a lot of coaching and structure on that. Structure and barking at people and screaming at them and telling them what to do, two totally different things. People like structure. They don't like getting yelled at. And then we have, we don't just make contests to make contests about who's going to get the most deliveries and stuff like that. We have contests that really measure what are we trying to do, right? Because, and that's where I see a breakdown with a lot of folks is we help people with contests and stuff like that. Well, if your contest is just to drive deliveries and then 2 weeks later, you're going to be talking about percent collected or we're not growing customers, we're doing things like that. Let's make sure that everything we're doing is fitting into the goals, not just of that promo, but of our brand and what we're trying to achieve as well.
I love the idea. Before we end the show, I wanted to talk to you about one last question because I've heard this and we've kind of talked about it a little bit before, and I wanted to make sure that we approach this on the show. We know that sometimes, some seasons we go through greatness. Some seasons we go through a little bit of hardship, right? The valleys and the hills. And some people have had a great 2023. Some people haven't had a great 2023. Right. Now we're in the 2024 season trying to get ready for that, get it all geared up. And sometimes you gotta pull back, right? The budget is there and you gotta pull back and you gotta make sure that you're fitting things within the budget that you have. Some people think that cutting back a large amount on marketing would help in different areas. I can buy more furniture, I can buy more merchandise, I can pay my guys better, I can get things done. Coming from where you come from, coming from the Andrew that's running Vox Populi and knowing how important the marketing is out there, what do you say to those guys who say, I'm going to cut back my marketing by 60%? Is that the move? And I'm not saying that because you're the marketing guy, but from a standpoint of business, how important is it in your mindset to keep marketing on the forefront versus cutting back?
So in 2007, 2008, when the housing market crashed and a lot of companies cut way, way back, we grew. And at the time, my two largest customers were Aaron's and Mattress Firm. Both of them at that time said, we have to dial up our marketing because we have to work harder now to capture that customer. And I think that it's almost counterintuitive, right? But again, go back and look and see. We were all able to grow like crazy and stuff like that the last couple of years when the money was easy. We have to work harder now to get the same result. And look, I get it. I run a business as well. You know, everything costs us more. Our associates cost us more. Our insurance costs us more. Our vehicles cost us more. Everything costs more. So we sit there and say, how do I cut expenses first? To me, cutting marketing at a time like this is like saying, okay, let's turn off the open sign to save electricity. Yes, you might save some money, but I think it's a short-sighted decision. And I think it's really tough to get that momentum back. I had one of my clients cut their budget earlier this year, and they decided in Q4 that they were going to bring it back. Well, one of the toughest challenges we're having right now is getting the momentum and the buy-in from the stores. Their stores are not executing. Are they getting increased results because they increased the marketing? Yes. Are they getting what they should be? I don't believe so. But I think it's because it's almost starting over. And there's a cumulative effect to what we're doing. There's it's not a direct one-to-one ratio of if I'm going to spend X, I'm going to get this kind of return and I'm going to see it. Your brand is something that builds on itself over and over and over again and staying relevant with those customers. And look, Pete, I mean, you're a regional manager. You've got a bunch of stores that you're overseeing and running. And we know that if we stop marketing and these customers go somewhere else, if Mrs. Jones goes somewhere else to buy her washer and dryer, then another brand took her off the street. I can't sell her another washer and dryer. Whereas if I'm staying in front and I'm doing those things, I got a chance to keep that customer. And I think that's one of the things that we really have to look at in this business is not just acquisition right now. Acquisition is super important, but how are we going to continue to market internally and externally to make sure that we keep that customer as well?
Well, I'm going to say the RTO show calls that the marketing snowball effect. Once you let that snowball get low, then you've got to restart that engine, and it takes a while to get it to where you need it to be.
And you're pushing uphill.
You are. And especially in this time frame, and a lot of people who are going through the same thing as you, that everybody's going for the same customer, and they're going to push and they're going to do the best they can to get that customer. So now is when the best deals comes out, when it's not so fruitful out there, and we've got to put a little extra into what we got. And that's what it is. So here at the RTO show, I want to tell you, thank you, Andrew Hajduk, for coming down, and Vox Populi for not only being a sponsor for the show, but kind of sharing the words of wisdom on marketing and branding and how we're going to get to where we want to be. Guys, build your brand. Make sure that it's something that you're doing, that it is the core value of what you have and how it sets you apart. And if you want to know how to do that, reach out to Andrew. You want to get that buy-in. You want to get the buy-in by an explanation from the top to the bottom. We actually did a podcast about that with Mike Skihan not that long ago, about getting the information from the top to the bottom. And Andrew's saying the same thing. It's super important to make sure that we explain what the goal of your current promos are and where the mindset came that we made it from. Also, make sure that you're not forgetting about your multi-level marketing, from making sure it's on social media to putting something in their hand when they're in the mailbox. You want to be seen all the time. You want to be on their fingertips and on their lips when they're saying, I need this. Where do I get it from? Well, I've got a couple marketing pieces from this guy down the road. I think that's where I'm going to go. And then make sure when they walk in the door, you execute the sale correctly. And then always remember that as we're doing this, the people are important. The marketing's important. What you're doing is important. But you can't do it by yourself. You've got to have a team approach. Make sure that everybody gets involved, not just by explanation, but when customers are walking through the door, we can fail them many different ways by bringing them in and not giving them what we say we were going to do. And if you're going to put a promotion out there, if you're going to build your brand, if you're going to say the things that you're going to say, make sure that you back it up at the counter. And that's what I got. Andrew, any last words for us today?
No, that's it. Pete, you summed it up great. Guys, again, just always remember, we market to our people as much as we market to our customers. And, the older I get, the more I find that the old sayings, parables, things like that apply. There's that the law of physics, nature abhors a vacuum. And we need to make sure that we recognize that with our communication, because I think that's where we all have a tendency to throw stuff out there and expect our people to figure out how to do it and stuff like that. Let's over communicate that and see what the results are.
Completely agree. Over-communicate the sales tip and make sure that they're helping you build your brand. Guys, we do appreciate you listening today. If you have any questions, you can email us at the show at pete@thertoshowpodcast.com. If you want to know what's going on with the show, you can also visit us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. We do have a LinkedIn account now, and you can go to the website at www.thertoshowpodcast.com, where you can see our sponsors or become a sponsor like Vox Populi and helping us out and reaching the RTO industry like we do. Again, we do appreciate it. We appreciate you joining us for now, Season 4. Andrew, thank you so much. And we'll say like we always do, keep your collections low to get your sales high. Have a great one.
Thanks, guys.